we'll have Jorge from Aragon if he's ready to.
Hello. It was great to share this couple of days with people in the community in a very safe setting to being able to speak our mind and talk about very complicated issues. I think my main takeaway, and I think it's the only thing that we have there in the wall as the biggest thing that we kind of agreed on, is we think that voting is very hard to define, especially because it's even hard to say, okay, who gets a voting share and why. Coin votes are not perfect, but we kind of agreed that having a way to aggregate different signals and being able to have different algorithms for weighting the signals could be very interesting. Also, I was very surprised and very happy to see that there was this kind of consensus on this idea of Ethereum having an ordered list of values, of shared values, so that whenever there's a tough decision that we need to make, we can go look at this list of values one by one and say, okay, given our priorities of values, how we should act. And I was very surprised. And in the context of Aragon, I think we learned that it's very important to make these decisions early on, because when you have an environment with many different stakeholders and there's a lot of money at stake, it's much more difficult to make these sort of decisions. And those were our key takeaways, and we would love to keep this conversation and this group of people meeting on a regular basis, and of course we commit to being able to use our tools to the extent possible to help Ethereum governance go forward and kind of govern this amazing blockchain that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Folks from Uport, we have Paul. Huh? Oh, okay. If you have anything to add.
I think I came in here, so I'm from Newport, and what was just said, I think is really, we came in for, okay, how can we help with identity and with reputation to make this better? I think the question, what is even the right team or the right group, and what kind of reputation is relevant to make this decision? I think I leave here with, I think, some positive takeaways in general. I think that we talked about the problems, but I found almost all the conversations ended up with a lot of questions, which I think shows where we are in terms of the stage of this. I think it's very encouraging to bring to have many people who are really engaged and very interested to address some of these things. But from an implementation perspective, okay, we can do something, we can help something with identity at this point. I think it's way too early. But it showed, I think, what are the questions we need to discuss, and I think some of the immediate actions which we defined, okay, values, I think is one of the most important. How can we make decisions in any kind of a governance if we don't know what we value as a good decision? I think that's where I think I think the term came up, values, but also do we need a constitution? What does that community or what do we stand for or not? I think it's kind of very interesting.
Excellent, thank you so much. Matan, were you interested? Cool. Just introduce yourself real quick.
Okay, my name is Matan Field from the Dowsec project. I guess I'm bringing the discussion to somewhat parallel or maybe orthogonal flavors. So on one hand, the desire to kind of formalize, governance, what governance is, even all the way to the mathematical level. What is governance? What are the requirements, if you want, the mathematical requirements from governance, and how do we probe the space of protocols that achieves those requirements? So that's one flavor I'm bringing, and then the second flavor is more the desire to do a diverse and large number of rapid, quick, real experiments with governance right away. And in terms of takeaway from the discussion, I kind of was, not surprised, but maybe overwhelmed with the or in a good way, from the multi-dimensionality of the discussion. So we're kind of 20 or 30 people, all from very, very different angles, and kind of seeing how different the angles and the questions that can be asked, so different that I think we are not even yet in a coherence about what question to ask. So yeah, so there's a long way to go. I think I agree. Yeah, I agree with Ruben. I mean, we are very far from an answer. What is the governance system for Ethereum? But I think we are very actually close, nearby, to doing real small experiments from which we can learn and move more rapidly. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Tom. And next, Dan from EdMax, if you'd like to share some thoughts.
Hi there. I'm Dan from MetaMask. This is a fun event. You know, some great ideas going around, a lot of different perspectives, all that. I'm going to try to reflect the experience that I had, since everybody's done a good job of reflecting theirs. I come from a sense of okay, there were a couple key terms that I really liked early on. Governance is kind of the error handling of the blockchain, right? So it's only necessary when everything's kind of gone wrong. I think that we've got a couple nice, clean examples in the ecosystem right now where things have gone wrong, and so people will have proposals for hard forks. And in particular, I was not very interested in, let's say, okay, like we can all improve our token contracts in the future and have governance and fail-safes and that, and we can wag our fingers all day that you can use better smart contract security and so forth. I think that at the end of the day, there's a loophole, which is that there could always be a hole, a bug in the most audited smart contract. And so what we're kind of seeking is, what is the failure mode of this blockchain when everything else goes wrong? And you know, there's a strong voice for immutability. There's a very strong voice on like GitHub and Reddit for like immutability is what gives it its credibility. Nobody would ever build on an immutable blockchain, things like that. I'm seriously suspicious of those. They almost seem like soft puppets, but maybe we didn't represent them adequately here because we did not see a lot of that here. I would love to see some statistical analysis of the accounts that downvoted EIP067, which would make it very easy to propose concrete hard forks and allow clients to easily implement them. Because one of the criticisms I've seen of hard forks is that it puts a lot of burden on developers. But if we took that burden off developers and on the proposers, then all that's left is about wide, kind of non-contentious adoption by users forking their clients over. By the end of the day, some of my favorite conversations were about, okay, so how do we get everybody on the same page about what forks to adopt and what should not? And some of that is about signaling. There's like hard signals you can do, like burning your ether in a way where it's dead on one chain or not. But you can also just have like off-chain social signals, or you could have an on-chain signal registry. You could use cool, like kind of liquid democracy, saying like, I'll fork if you fork, and you know, I'll fork if these 100 people fork, or something like that. And you could make a very strong consensus for a hard fork choice rule. And so those are some of my takeaways that I was most interested in with, by the end of the day, because I think a lot of this was about how do we agree on hard forking in non-contentious ways when it's not just a technical upgrade. Because for some reason we seem to be totally okay with technical upgrades in this ecosystem, but there seem to be very vocal crowds that are very against specific state changes. And you know, you might not feel the same way when you're the person writing a bug and suddenly freezing your organization's ability to do anything. So consider that. Consider what kind of platform you want to build on. Would you want to build on one that tells you that you're crap out of luck because you know, a bug that nobody ever saw happen, or maybe one that there's some kind of failsafe, and what would that failsafe be, and how can we get on the same page and gain legitimacy from the entire community, not just some kind of ad hoc democracy that's like coin holder group, but actually reflective of the value of the people participating in that community. Thank you.
That was really great. Thanks a lot. Would you be interested? No? Okay. You don't have to. So we'll jump right into the panel. So we have an all-star panel here today with Lane from the Ethereum Foundation, Hudson from the Ethereum Foundation, Nick also from the Ethereum Foundation. But Hudson and Nick share the distinction of being EIP editors, so we're very lucky to have them here.
Is this our?
This is not the
Yeah,
whole panel.
Utah's
This is not the whole panel.
We'll get the other panelists up here. Utah and
Where should we go?
we have chairs right here.
Let's scoot.
Maybe also more space.
You can have a seat. Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm just going to take this initiative while we're getting set up for the panel to just share a tiny bit about how this initiative came to happen and what it is. I think we kind of glossed over that part a little bit, and I know there's been a little bit of confusion about that. So hi guys, my name is Lane Reddig. I am a core developer on the EWASM team. I also have been helping Hudson organize the All Core Devs calls recently, so I've had a little bit of a backseat view of Ethereum governance recently. So just a tiny bit of background. So there was an initiative that was launched last year and into early this year called the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians by Jamie Pitts and Greg Colvin, which I'm sure many of you here have heard about. I just want to emphasize that this is not the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians. I know we were not super clear about the messaging. That initiative is sort of modeled after sort of engineering task forces like the IET from the non-blockchain world. The idea being bringing together a bunch of kind of technical minds to address and discuss and solve and technical issues and have proposals. So one of the sort of ideas that came out of the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians up to now is that maybe that's not the right channel for discussing non-technical issues. So the term we're using is philosophy. So casually referring to this as kind of the philosophy of Ethereum governance, and that sort of refers to the political side, the economic side, the ethical side of governance, the stuff that's non-technical. So that's kind of part of the background. On top of that, there were relatively contentious issues that came up over the past few months, and I guess personally speaking, I feel that governance is as important as scaling in the Ethereum world, and scaling has been getting a lot of attention. Governance has been getting a lot less. So this is the first attempt that I'm aware of on the part of the community to kind of bring people together and just kind of think deeply about what governance is and how it can be done better, and just understanding current processes. As far as who we are a group of stakeholders who care a great deal about Ethereum as a community and as a technology. We care a great deal about governance. We all happen to be in Toronto, and that's kind of how this came together here. And so something that was sort of a bit of an open question at the moment is kind of where do we go from here, right? This thing, this I don't even know what the word for it is, event, right? EIP0 is the name we've been using. It's a spontaneous, one-off, call it kind of a pop-up thing. But there does seem to be some feeling that there's some value in this, and maybe this initiative should be continued. Maybe it needs a formal name. Maybe we need to do another meetup or something like that. So we can discuss that on the panel. And we have some concrete ideas which are forthcoming. So there will definitely be some blog posts. This was part of our live stream earlier. Lewis, I believe you spoke a little bit about some of the ideas we had around grants for certain projects that are of value and working groups. So anyway, I'll sit down and shut up now, but I just wanted to say that this is of the community, by the community, for the community. So please, talk to any of us up here, share your ideas, tell us your thoughts, and please get involved. This is going to be hopefully an open initiative going forward. Cool. Oh yeah, all right, let's do it. I already introduced myself, so maybe does that mic? This one is not.
Is the mic working? Yep. You can share it on that side and that one.
Yeah,
share on that side.
Okay, so I'm Jutta. I'm CEO and co-founder of Parity. Do a short introduction, right?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Hudson Jameson, and I'm known as Spooktacular on the internets, and I'm with the Ethereum Foundation, and I do the core developer calls, and I'm an EIP editor.
Hi, I'm Kurt Green. I work with Givit and the White Hat Group and various other projects to help them out. And yeah.
I'm Allison Alexis, trying to do a startup called EIP0, also with this MPO in Toronto called CryptoChecks.
I'm Luke. I'm a researcher at Aragon. I'm working on kind of DAOs and governance and just the general economics of the project.
I'm Nick Johnson. I'm a core developer for the Ethereum Foundation, also the team lead of ENS and an EIP editor.
Okay, cool. Thank you guys. So I'm going to just kick off with some seed questions here. I think we have a pretty solid chunk of time for the panel, and then we'll open up to the audience for questions as well. So the first thing I'd like to ask, and this is kind of fun for everybody, is what was your, and I guess, okay, we already heard this from some people, so if you already stood up and said this, maybe you don't need to say it again, but what was your biggest takeaway from the past 2 days?
There were a lot of takeaways. I think like my main reason for being here was to listen and learn what other people's perspectives are on governance. Like when we started Parity, we were mainly super enthusiastic about building something for the community, exploring like the potential of the tech, giving people tools for exploring what could be done. And I think one of the main reasons why blockchains got so much attention is because of all the potential they have for building better systems, a better society, whatever. And at the same time, like this fear of then making the wrong choices and ending up with the same systems that we didn't want anymore, like the same corruption, the same issues. And so I'm very encouraged just by the various ideas that were discussed for getting better systems in place for sensing what the community wants and whatnot.
I'm not sure exactly what my greatest takeaway is. I would say that a few takeaways I had were that things are very hard to define and organize. We tried to define community and that didn't work. We tried to define, what the current governance processes are, and we only came up with a few. I think one of the best takeaways is that I have a lot of hope for improving current processes and documenting current processes that I didn't have before this meeting. Not in a way where I was like, oh, we're never going to document any of this, but more just like people are actually excited about figuring out how to solve these problems and excited about coming together for the solutions, whereas before, without this meeting, I wouldn't have known how much interest there was around Ethereum governance in general. So that was my takeaway.
I guess the main thing for me was that there are low-hanging fruits that we can work on, like better communication mechanisms, and also that governance is a sort of a multivariate problem, that we have lots of overlapping sub-communities and there's no one metric that will let us measure the sentiment of the entire community, so that instead we need to build mechanisms that let us measure the incentives and the opinions of various subgroups and then provide those as easily as possible to as many people as possible to make it easier to make decisions.
My biggest takeaway was listening to a lot of people that are deeply involved in kind of the current technical governance process and their pain points where they're trying to represent user interests and there isn't a good way to measure user sentiment. You listen to people on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit, probably not Facebook, knowing where we are, but on social media channels. And you can't quantify that. You can't it's very difficult to not necessarily be biased in terms of your own filter bubble. But even if you did do a good job of that, it's hard to quantify that into an actual actionable result. And so even if you're trying to do everything with the best intentions, you're trying to follow the community's wishes, if you don't have a good way to measure what the community wants in any reasonable fashion, you end up in gridlock. And I think it was interesting to see all the ideas come out for how can we start to measure some of these key things and implement that into sort of a more legitimate process.
Yeah, I would say my greatest takeaway was, for me, actually, I come from the business world and I've been involved in different types of governance, but truly how challenging it is and is going to be within blockchain communities. And maybe it also just gave me a little bit more flavor of why things seem to be happening slowly. One of the things is I always sort of think why is everything so slow? Why is this not being done? And it's there's so many challenges, and a lot of things can be done and are being done. And I think that was a big takeaway for me, is that hey, a lot of people are thinking about these things. It's really challenging.
Yeah, I have a lot of takeaways. There were some really cool things that I got out of this, and we always have this idea, oh, we can DAOify something and then it'll be cool. But we don't have governance, how do you DAOify something if you can't, you have to design the actual governance within a DAO. So there's so much work that needs to be done, and defining terms was very difficult, but I actually liked the voting session where we talked about like what is voting, what is not voting, why do you need to vote, and we talked about shared assets being this, when you have to make a decision over a shared asset, how do you make that decision? And the biggest takeaway though was signaling, and how it's such a low-hanging fruit. I think it was mentioned by various people here, but we took down all the different people that we thought were stakeholders. And if you guys remember when there was the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, and the SegWit 2x and who was signaling what, they had all these cool websites that said who was doing what, and we haven't really done that in Ethereum. And I think it's a really good, easy first step to understand what do the different stakeholders, first define the stakeholders, and then what do the different stakeholders think, and actually go get out there and figure out what they think. Because designing a deterministic voting system is really, that's difficult and probably not a good idea, honestly. But informing every individual person running a node, or right now in blockchain, every individual has the opportunity to make the decision for themselves in a fork or in an upgrade, and they don't have accurate information. And so if we can make an effort to get that information out there, we will be a lot better off.
Thanks for the awesome answers. Griff, I'm glad you mentioned low-hanging fruit. That's what I want to ask about. So some things in governance, as we now know, are very hard, like defining community and voting. We'll get to those things, but I thought we'd start with the softball because we discussed some of these. What are some low-hanging fruit? What are some easy wins, like things that we can do now to kind of just improve governance? I'll just kick off with the first one on my mind, which is like understanding the current process and documenting. I think documentation is enormously important. I think not a lot has been done, and that's one of the things that I'm personally working on. Okay. Anyone who has an idea?
Yeah, so because I'm personally involved in the EIP process, it was really great to hear everyone's ideas on how to improve the EIP process for this event, or during this event, we discussed it. Stuff like improving EIP1, which defines the rules and who are the stakeholders and the actors within making and auditing and editing EIPs. Another thing is having more defined processes, like Lane was mentioning, documenting like what does the all-core dev meeting even mean? A lot of people don't even know like how to join, how to add items to the agenda, what to do with it. So documenting those things are definitely low-hanging fruit that I'm going to be contributing to.
Like I mentioned, just building a simple website that actually goes and finds the different stakeholders and gets opinions from the influencers that are in those groups, mining pools and businesses, exchanges, devs, and recording them, and also whatever you can do algorithmically, like grab all that information and put it in one simple place so that people can be informed on what other people's opinions are. And finding a project manager to actually build that website, right? Like, done.
I think coin holder signaling is one of the key demographics that we aren't utilizing right now. Like, we've had a few instances like Carbon Vote, and there was a recent one, but the participation is very low. I think making that a more common part of the process and improving the usability, and getting community feedback on that, and like making this key stakeholder group that's potentially like underrepresented right now feel more represented in the process is a quick win.
Awesome, thanks guys. Yeah, so one of my takeaways was the community thing, which has already come up here. It's obviously huge. If you look at the wall over there where we did our unconference and came up with a list of things we wanted to talk about, and you sort of look at where the stickers are, you'll see a number of these topics are things like defining the community, listening to the community voting, that kind of thing. So it's something that matters a lot to all of us. So on the topic of signals, which we mentioned, right, what sort of signals do you guys listen to today? And I guess the second part is, what sort of signals would you like to hear?
So, obviously there's a lot of discussions going on online. I very much think it's good to find ways for talking to people face to face, like these events here or other events are important. One thing I particularly liked that we did this morning was an ARMA session, which is sort of which went in a way that it sort of sat in between, like doing it online and in person here, and I think that could be a very effective way of scaling the in-person conversation.
Yeah, I usually look at online chat rooms, social media, to get a general idea, but I also talk to people who talk to other people, like in individual chat rooms. So for instance, with minors, I have a lot of them on Skype, and if an issue comes up, I talk to them and I just am like, what do you feel about this? And sometimes it's like individual minors, sometimes it's bigger pools, but that gives me the sentiment for what minors think. And then I'll go on Reddit and I'm like, well, what do trolls think? What do bad people think? And then I go on Reddit and I see what bad people think.
What does bad think?
So yeah, I go to a variety of sources after that and just try to come up with what I think is, what people are feeling.
For my part, it's mostly Twitter and Reddit, plus the EIP's repository. We're sort of moving how stuff gets discussed around EIPs, but certainly historically there's been a lot of conversation in the repository itself about the merits of ideas, and although it's technically a technical discussion there, it gets into governance a lot. And a surprising number of people reach out on Twitter DMs or Reddit to express their concerns or their appreciation or their condemnation, depending on their inclination, which is actually really instructive, because when somebody takes the extra step to actually send a message like that, it kind of indicates they feel strongly about something.
I would echo a lot of the same locations there, but I would also say that there's like a governance channel on Gitter, and I feel like that's one of the communities that has a really high signal to noise ratio.
I think a lot of people are not aware of that, so let's just very explicitly say gitter.im/ethereum/governance. That is kind of the de facto public community right now, so please check it out.
Yeah, I would say just like a good mix of both kind of something like this in person where you can't kind of hide behind a computer screen, but at the same time I think online things where you can, sometimes you get more truthful things, but you also get negative. So it's, for me, I get a lot of my information about crypto on Twitter. Basically because I found that a lot of people who are, I don't want to say experts, but have a lot of knowledge, usually have passion and want to share it. So it's a good way for me, who's someone who's learning, to get information. And I have reached out directly to a lot of people who I never would have thought would answer, and they do. So that's been really important. But I think things like this, because when you get down to it, a lot of things that we're trying to solve here with governance are really human issues. And just one thing, like part of the reason I wanted to be involved is that a lot of these concerns or issues and things we're trying to solve, there is a lot of different organizations and things all over the world that have already come up with some solutions, and we don't really have to reinvent the wheel with every single solitary thing.
Yeah, as far as signals that I listen to, I'm lucky, like Hudson, to be in some of these crisis management channels. So I'm lucky, and so we have some easy access to movers and shakers, and it's kind of not really fair, but we get a better perspective of different stakeholders than a lot of other people. But then, other than that, Twitter is really the best for sure. Because then you follow whoever you want to follow, and you can actually be like, yeah, what does that guy think? Let me find him on Twitter, and usually they're chatting. It seems to be a very popular place to hang out, way better than Reddit. I don't even go on Reddit anymore. So.
Awesome, thanks. So one important part of Ethereum governance today is the EIP process. Nick and Hudson very helpfully yesterday, so these guys are both EIP editors and have been part of that process for a long time. They did a session yesterday which we live streamed and recorded, explaining a bit of the background and how the EIP process works, so please check that out. Again, it's recorded and online if you haven't seen it yet. But I do believe you guys had a couple of ideas came out here about how to improve that process. Would you guys like to talk about that?
You go first.
So one of the things I've been doing very heavily lately is borrowing from the IETF's technical processes, because I think they've had nigh on 30 years to practice and perfect it, and I think we can learn a lot from them. And so one thing that I suggested that we can adopt in future, particularly for ERCs, so contract standards, but really in general, is the idea of a last call. So one of the least clear things at the moment is when something should transition from draft to accepted or draft to final, or when something's ready to move to the next stage. And so the suggestion here is that we have a last call state. So effectively, when the author or the authors believe that the draft is mature and ready, they send in a pull request asking to move it to final if it's an ERC. And then the editor goes, okay, last call is now, say, a week or 2 weeks for anyone with technical objections to the standard to raise them. And the job then is for the author to demonstrate that there are no technical concerns, and for people who believe there are to raise them, and then the editor basically to go in and look at are there substantial technical issues that haven't been addressed. And in the IETF sense, addressed can mean the standard's been fixed to accommodate them, or it's been explained as being out of scope or irrelevant or whatever. So there is some subjectivity, but we try and minimise it. And then if there are no remaining technical concerns that are unaddressed, then it gets merged as final. And I think that would help clarify the life cycle of an EIP, particularly ERCs.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that we're kind of planning on doing. Another one is updating EIP1 to make it a little bit more clear the difference between having a core protocol level EIP and an ERC EIP, which is generally a community or contract standard. So differentiating that a little bit more is going to help the process be a little bit more smooth. Also, adding more EIP editors is, I think, something that we talked about a little bit, which would definitely be helpful. Only issue being that people don't want to do it because it's kind of a sucky job. So if you want to be an EIP editor, if you're in the community and you have experience kind of doing both the technical and the people side of things and want to contribute, please reach out. We will welcome any help at all on the EIP side.
I would say maybe there's a politician thing here where anyone who wants to be one probably isn't qualified. So if you have a friend who should be an EIP editor, maybe nominate them instead.
And that's our answer.
Thanks, guys. Cool. Another of my takeaways was the topic of values, which came up a few times, and in particular, when these contentious issues arise, take your pick. I think maybe if we as a community are able to articulate our values and sort of get on the same page about them, that might help make the debate around these contentious issues a bit easier. So, on the topic of the values or the Ethereum philosophy, what do you guys think? Do you guys have any ideas what should or should not be included?
I'm pretty cynical about this. I think that just about any value or variable that you don't constrain when you form a community, you're going to get people who join with all opinions on that, and therefore it's extremely difficult to narrow this down to nail anything down that wasn't specified at the start afterwards. So we may be able to find some things that we all agree on, and we may be able to find some things that most of us agree on, but I'm worried that some of them will be depressingly basic. Like, I think the best suggestion we came up with yesterday was the thing that all Ethereum stakeholders have in common is that they want more blocks to be added to the end of the Ethereum chain.
What's at what rate? What throughput?
Exactly 1 every 14 seconds. No other answer is acceptable.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons is because it's, like, to a large extent comes from what I said earlier, like the wish of building something that's not something what we had and that is issues and that we don't like, and so therefore it's hard then to actually define what it is that we want. I mean, apart from that, we know we don't want corruption and all the other issues.
Yeah, I would say it would be near impossible to do right now. But maybe as we improve some of these singling mechanisms, we have a better understanding of different stakeholders and we give them more of a voice. Maybe there's some alignment there that can happen. And I think that would be a worthwhile exercise.
I think we should do it while we're still small enough to do it, and before we get too big and that it won't be applicable for us to do. And I think a good way to do it is just for anyone in this room or online to just write one and see if people follow it. Because I think people will iterate on it and fork it and do other things and edit it. So we don't have to wait for any official community consensus necessarily that's like over a certain threshold, like 90 or 95%. We can just make something or make multiple things and see what sticks.
Yeah, I would say values was something that I brought up because I find it very hard in terms of some of the governance processes to be able to really even suggest anything because it's very unsure of what is important. Like there's 1,000 things that are important. How can you really have all those 1,000 needs be met? So there's like everything, there's trade-offs and there's pros and cons of everything. If you create a value system, well, if it's not adaptable in the future, that value system may be different, but then people say, no, this was the original one, it must be this. If you don't create something, then you have like everybody trying to come up with governance for something we barely know what we're trying to govern. So it's pros and cons, and it's very difficult. And like this is something, governance, in my opinion, that from the beginning of time humanity is trying to solve. We haven't solved it. So are we going to solve this in 2 days in a decentralized system that is kind of decentralization in some ways is a little bit against human nature? Probably not very quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical of the idea, honestly. I don't know. I think it would add value and it would make our lives easier from the governance perspective, but I don't know that it is actually the best, most effective thing or most optimal thing for Ethereum to have some kind of in the middle to build a new like mantra, a manifesto, something like that. Now, I would be very interested to hear all the different stakeholders, what their manifesto is and what they're coming into Ethereum with, and maybe if we can actually find commonalities between them, that would be really cool to find out. But I fear that creating some kind of manifesto could disenfranchise people who don't follow it. What is the more corporate side? Do they feel the same way about decentralization as maybe the more anarchist side of the Ethereum contingent? There's probably not, right? But at the same time, should Ethereum be a politically neutral platform that they can all build on? I think so. So while it would make our job so much easier from the governance perspective, I don't know that it's a great idea. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, and we should experiment with it and play it out, but I predict failure. So.
Is there anything in life that's politically neutral? It depends how you define it, but I don't think so. So whether you define it or you don't define it doesn't necessarily mean it's not there.
I would say a hammer is politically neutral, right? And tools themselves can be used for one purpose or another, but a tool is best if it's politically neutral. That would be my opinion.
Well, but Ethereum's a community. Is there any politically neutral community? It's fine. Let's move on. I'd like to talk about forks. This is something that we've discussed a bit. So, are they good or bad? What's their role? And in particular, is there any creative ideas to make them less dire?
Let me just start with forks are awesome. They're the best thing since sliced bread. What?
For salads. Salads.
For salads. No. I love forks. I love them so much. Right? I'm biased here. A fork really saved my life once. So, why
don't you take half the audience and go over there?
Let's fork. No, I really do think the ability to fork is what makes blockchains so special. It's the fact that you can't use this tool to impose your values on other people. And that is what forks bring to the equation that other technologies are really missing. And this is the same in open source tech, right? This is kind of a carryover from that. To make them less dire, I don't know. There were some really cool ideas, and I think I'll let everybody else go into that. But awesome, forks are awesome.
Well, I can't talk about how to make them less dire, but yeah, I do agree with some of what you're saying in terms of, that is a really amazing thing of like, hey, we're not creating something that can never be adapted, and if you don't agree, you can go and do something different. But at the same time, if you're going to have like hundreds of forks every year, that's not practical. So it's again, like, I guess everything that I say will kind of end up back at this, but it's like there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs, there's some type of a balanced approach in most things in life ends up being the best, and it's unfortunate because you don't get the very best of what you want, but you maybe not getting the worst, and it leaves a lot of people feeling like it's incomplete because, hey, my idea didn't get taken, this idea didn't, but we don't live in any utopia, and it's just not very realistic to think that there's no trade-offs, and yeah, so that's basically.
I mean, forking frequently could be one of the means of making forks less dire, so maybe we should do that every day. So we talked a lot about reducing the cost of forking. That was one of the sessions, and how to achieve that, like the basic cost of like coordination around like how to process with the fork, proceed with the fork. I think forks are great. I mean, it is the only way of improving or actually changing the protocol that we have. So it becomes an issue when it's perceived as like something that splits the community, and that is something that goes back to the cost and coordination problem. But yeah, I suppose like without forks, that would be a sad world.
I would say that forks are like an incredible new tool that we have in terms of social coordination that reduces like the cost of exit and just makes everybody generally better off. It makes governance to some degree easier because you have this ability to exit peacefully and go your separate way. And the things that we do that kind of artificially make forks harder to do, I think, are bad choices. But there's just fundamentally things that make forks painful. If you're a community and you're splitting and you've got like a friend over there that's on the other side and you're like, no, that's sad. I mean, that's not a good thing. So from my perspective, if we start to think about forks in terms of different layers of decisions that we opt into, and we try and isolate like these contentious forks that split people up, so that they happen less frequently, that would be ideal, right? Forking should always be an option, but it should be like an option of last resort.
I think that something that's come up recently in some of the core developer meetings are changing people's perception on forks. Specifically, whenever there is like a fork happening, even if it's just a simple protocol upgrade, people freak out because they're like, is there going to be new coins? Is there going to be an Ethereum Classic? And what really, it should be boring for the most part until it's a little bit controversial, and even then, you have a choice to go with it or not go with it. It's as simple as that. We should really be focusing our excitement and energy on things like really boring client optimizations that make Geth and Parity go faster, or other advancements in sharding and Casper and other research topics. And part of I think it's Vitalik who actually said we should focus less on hard forks and freaking out about them, and focus more on research and client improvements. So that's kind of my view on forks. Like, they're really, everyone said here is exactly correct. They're necessary and something so it doesn't force you to actually participate in the system you don't want to participate in, and that's great. But really, they should be boring most of the time.
From my point of view, and I think it's fairly uncontroversial, forks are kind of the Supreme Court of Ethereum governance. Yeah. They're the ultimate layer that you can go to if you fundamentally disagree with a decision, or a lack of decision. And I think that by making forking cheaper and easier, we can hopefully actually make it rarer for contentious forks to happen, because forks are the mechanism by which you can prevent people from imposing their views on you. And if people know that you can easily fork away, then I think they're less incentivized to try and impose their views, because they know it will be ineffective. And I think that makes for a more inclination to try and resolve differences and find a path that works for everyone, unless it truly is irresolvable, in which case you're better off forking anyway.
Thanks. That's a really important topic. Utah, I'd like to go back to something you said a moment ago, which really resonates for me, and that's that for many of us, Ethereum is sort of our attempt to maybe reimagine, I'm paraphrasing here, but to sort of reimagine society and governance and build a better system. Right? This is again a message that resonates very strongly for me. And I think that we've been very fortunate to have been given the space and the ability and the funding, et cetera, to do that up to now. But one of the things that we spoke about the past couple of days is sort of law, right? And I guess one of the parts of blockchain that's most interesting for me is what happens when all these beautiful idealistic things that we build sort of meet the real world and real world law and jurisdictions and things like that. And so it's a bit of an open-ended question, but maybe something like, do you think that conflict is inevitable between what we're building and sort of legal systems in the real world, and kind of how do we prepare for that?
I think some form of clash is inevitable. I don't think the traditional world is going to ignore cryptocurrency and so on forever, and we've already seen the start of that. But I think there's going to be some adaptation required on both sides, because there are properties about blockchains that make them very hard to regulate, and if regulators decide they want to oppose onerous regulations, they're quickly going to find that it doesn't mesh so well with blockchain, and there are some things that simply can't be done, as they discovered with the internet and encrypted messaging and various other things. On the other hand, I think the blockchain communities are going to realize that they can't just ignore the traditional world and expect them to go away and leave them alone.
I think that this sort of echoes back to the idea of forking or voice and exit. If you use blockchains, and this is what got me into this space in the first place, to solve some large-scale global coordination problems, and you provide some of the same certainty and safety that people expect from their governance, you give them a viable option, a viable alternative, and regardless of how that turns out, that sort of forces the established processes to get better. It's just a pressure that improves the world for everybody, whether it's everything becomes blockchainified or not.
I'm also still excited about what people call programmable regulation or whatever, the fact that you could use it in order to implement processes that are actually then useful for users. So one of the clashes that we're currently seeing in Europe is the issue around the GDPR, the General Directive around data protection. While fundamentally, I believe the intention behind GDPR and the reason why people do like blockchains, there's a broad shared perspective on that, on the protection of privacy, and so I would love to see that we actually can use blockchains in that way for building better systems that make interactions online safe for people.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I mean, I think we're way off from. So I really love what Luke and Utah had to say, because from Luke, it's that is the dream, that we can build a second system that people can choose to be a part of, that fulfill a lot of the services and I mean, what our government's providing us, right? They're providing a bunch of services that fulfill kind of the problems of tragedy of the commons. And maybe there's a way that we can, in a decentralized, voluntary way, collaborate and use blockchain technology to do that without having to use force, which is kind of the government's general tool. And that's really exciting, but so far off, right? We have a long way to go before that. And same with what Utah's saying, I believe that there probably is this hybrid opportunity, because it's not like we want to throw away the thousands of years of experimentation that have gone into creating the governments that we have today. There are really cool things that we can learn from that. And maybe those people who are in there can start automating some of the bureaucracy away through blockchain technology. What if you had a currency whose taxation was built in on every transaction, right? And then you don't need accountants, you don't need to fill out tax returns every year. It was just automated. Then it went into a fund where people have some kind of governance mechanism on how to decide where those funds are spent to deal with these tragedy of the commons issues. There's a lot of cool things, and it's that blockchain can do, and there's a lot of dreamers in this room that are planning on building those things, so it's really exciting, but there's definitely going to be clashes because it's a power struggle. in the end, you know, decentralization is, you know, which is blockchain's main, shtick, I would say, is like, that's taking power away from powerful individuals. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. So, of course there's going to be clashes, especially when they have force in their back pocket. But that's okay, I don't think it'll be that bad. And so far, it's been really good. The SEC has really only gone after scammers. I mean, I'm amazed at how soft the pushback has been so far. So maybe we're all a little too paranoid, honestly. Maybe there won't be as much clash as we think. So far, there hasn't really been. They just regulate a little bit and we work around it. It's not a big deal.
Griff, is Ether a security?
Definitely not.
Yeah, I think that there definitely will be clashes, but just coming from the finance world, I know that some of the reason that there are a lot of regulations isn't just to like hold people down and to try and like create this power, power on the top. Some of it is for sure, but some of it is because there's been, like you said, thousands of years of history. Without this, what has happened? Well, the strongest have, and maybe the more evil have taken advantage of other people. And do we want that to be the way if you don't have resources or you don't have the same advantages that, well, too bad. But one thing I just wanted to read a quick quote, like what you are talking about with power, from Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Yes, there hasn't been as much clashes, but it's really a beginning phase, and if things do go towards very, very disruptive, there will be a lot more clashes, and yeah, people don't like to give up power, and trying to get people to give up power, it's very difficult.
Final thoughts? Cool. On a related topic, I want to talk a little bit about experimentation, something that we discussed. I think I can probably speak for all of us when I say that none of us claims to have final answers, that we've invented a perfect system. And one of the exciting things that we've seen so far in blockchain and in Ethereum is all sorts of experimentation in different kinds of layers, in different ways, different economies, that kind of thing. But on the topic of experimentation with governance, and in particular the difference between layer 1 and layer 2, right? What's kind of the role and what should of each of those layers, and what sort of things should we see or should we try to experiment with on layer 1 versus layer 2? Yeah, the restrooms over here. Feel free, it's okay, we don't need to block you.
Well, I can say that Giveth has been doing a lot of experimentation as much as we can, and that's kind of what we're really excited about, is building blockchain-based entities and seeing how that actually works and what is it like to be outside of the system. I guess I've been working with blockchain-based entities since the dawn, right? And I'm not going back.
Great. So, what is a blockchain-based entity?
That's something with no legal structure, right? It only exists in the blockchain space. So Giveth receives donations, and those donations go to contributors. It's only smart contracts. It's not necessarily so decentralized, right? There is a clear system in place, but there's some interesting aspects of blockchain-based entities. They're completely transparent. Well, assuming you verify the code, they can be easily completely transparent. And you can trace where the funds are going, and you can do a lot of interesting things that may not be allowed for a legal structure, like a foundation. I mean, this is kind of what we're really trying to play with, is in like a Swiss foundation, the people who donate are not allowed to have any say over how those funds are spent. So we want people who donate to have some authority over those funds once they enter the organization. And so we're able to do that because we're just some smart contracts, and people can move money through those smart contracts, and there isn't really ownership over it. So as far as experimentation, it's a little late to do a lot of experimentation on level 1. probably a bad idea. But on layer 2, every ICO is an experiment in creating a new economy, and that's fucking cool. You know, like there are tens of economies being experimented with every day. For some, just for selfish reasons, but no matter what, or either way, like this is really valuable. And 1 out of 100 of those experiments, we're going to learn something really amazing out of it.
I think that it's good to have experimentation, and right now, like Griff said, it's harder to do at level 1 or layer 1 than layer 2. But part of our discussions the last few days have been signaling systems, figuring out like the noise to signal ratio and having multiple like votes or discussion threads or ways for people to actually express their opinion and be heard. And I think if we combine all of those into like a big experiment, that's going to help us a lot decide really controversial issues that are upcoming or happening right now. So yeah, experimenting with signaling methods, I think, is going to be something that I really hope people jump into. I know you talked about getting a collective of the signaling methods onto like a web page, and I think that's a really good idea.
One of the really interesting things about Ethereum as a platform is that it sort of abstracts the economics and the crypto economics of securing block production away from application developers. So that means that you can explore a design space for like things that may not make sense if you had to also worry about the incentives of rewarding block producers or figuring out all the constraints that come with that. And so you can see things emerge like stable coins and some of these other systems, and I imagine that we'll see even more experimentation and stuff that we haven't even imagined. So I think it's really important that we make sure that the layer 1 solution is hospitable to those types of experimentations. Layer 2.
I said that we shouldn't do so much experimentation on layer 1, but then again, we are definitely planning on doing some major experimentation on layer 1, right?
So let's dive right into that, because that was actually my next question, right? So we have this upcoming transition to proof of stake in the not too distant future. I mean, there will be other things, but that's sort of the immediate one. What sort of opportunities does that present, right? One of the contexts in which this was discussed was changing block rewards and changing rewards to miners and maybe reallocating some of those rewards towards public goods. So what sort of opportunities does it present, and what are the implications for governance, Ethereum governance?
Well, definitely. I mean, if we're lowering the... So this is a weird thing that happens in taxation where you create a tax and then you say it has a timeline that it's going to expire. But then when you get to that timeline, the people that are collecting the tax are like, yeah, actually, we're just going to funnel it over this direction, right? And so, hey, we got to learn from those lessons. We have a tax. Every block right now, 3 Ether are sent to a miner, and we're not going to need miners anymore. So there is an opportunity to take some of those funds and allocate it to a specific fund or something like that. It's going to be a really like a minefield to try to navigate that idea, and I doubt it even happens because it's just such a touchy subject. Like, where do those funds get sent? But there are other blockchains that do that, right? Like Dash has Dash and all the Dash forks. They have the 10% of the mining rewards that go to a fund that the masternodes get to vote on, and that they use that to pay their development. They use that to pay for trips to conferences, for charity actions. They're building houses in Mexico. It's really interesting, they have a proposal system, and I'm honestly surprised at how few since the DAO that other experimentation in governance has been going on in layer 2. There really are very few, so I don't think that without a solid idea on governance, on a governance mechanism, that we can divert funds from this as an opportunity, but it's there, and maybe if we start experimenting fast, because proof of stake is coming, so.